The coastal city of Kherson in Ukraine's south has reportedly become the first major city in the country to be taken over by Russian forces. Key points. Kherson's mayor said Russian troops were in the streets and had forced their way into the city council building. Ukraine's government had earlier played down reports Kherson had fallen into Russian hands. Russia said Kherson was under Russian soldiers' complete control. It came as Volodymyr Zelenksyy, in an overnight video address, called on Ukrainians to keep up the resistance. "We are people who in a week have destroyed the plans of the enemy," the Ukrainian president said. "They will have no peace here. They will have no food. They will have here not one quiet moment." Moscow's isolation deepened, meanwhile, when most of the world lined up against it at the United Nations to demand it withdraw from Ukraine. After 7 days of Russian assault, the United Nations Refugee Agency announced that 1 million people had fled Ukraine since the invasion, the swiftest exodus of refugees this century. Other recent developments on the ground in Ukraine include Russian forces in complete control of Kherson. Kherson's mayor, Igor Kolokhayev, told on Wednesday night, local time, that Russian troops were in the streets and had forced their way into the city council building. Loading. Ukraine's government had earlier played down reports that Kherson, a strategically important shipbuilding city of 280,000 on the banks of the Dnieper River near where it flows into the Black Sea, had fallen into Russian hands. Mr. Kolokhayev urged Russian soldiers not to shoot at civilians and publicly called on civilians to walk through the streets only in daylight and in ones and twos. "We do not have the armed forces in the city, only civilians and people who want to live here," he said in a statement. The New York Times reported that a senior Ukrainian government official had confirmed that Russian troops had seized the city. However, Mr. Zelenskyy's office told the Associated Press that it could not comment on the situation in Kherson while the fighting was still going on. Loading. Russian Defense Ministry spokesman Igor Konashenkov said Kherson was under Russian soldiers' complete control. He said that the city's civilian infrastructure, essential facilities and transport were operating as usual and there were no shortages of food or essential goods. Mr. Konashenkov said talks between the Russian commanders, city administrations, and regional authorities on how to maintain order in the city were underway on Wednesday, local time. Russian military trucks and tanks have been spotted on the streets of Kherson. A senior U.S. defense official said that they had seen claims that the Russians had taken Kherson, but that the Ukrainian military is rejecting that claim. "Our view is that Kherson is very much a contested city at this point," said the official, who spoke on the condition of anonymity to make military assessments. In his video address early on Thursday morning, local time, Mr. Zelenksyy did not comment on whether the Russians have seized several cities, including Kherson. "If they went somewhere, then only temporarily. We'll drive them out," he said. He said the fighting was taking a toll on the morale of Russian soldiers, who go into grocery stores and try to find something to eat. "These are not warriors of a superpower," he said. "These are confused children who have been used." He said the Russian death toll has reached about 9,000. "Ukraine doesn't want to be covered in bodies of soldiers," he said. "Go home." M to mute, left and right arrows to seek, up and down arrows for volume. Watch 41 seconds 41s. The Russian delegation has arrived at Belovezhskaya Pushcha on the Belarus-Poland border for the second round of peace talks with their Ukrainian counterparts. Peace talks due on Thursday. Earlier, an aide to Russian President Vladimir Putin told reporters the Ukrainians were expected imminently to arrive in Belarus to resume talks on Thursday. "As far as I understand, the Ukrainian delegation has already left Kiev and is currently in transit," Vladimir Medinsky told reporters in the southwestern Belarusian city of Brest. "We understand the logistic difficulties for them," he said, adding that Belarus guaranteed the safety of the Ukrainian side in Belarus, and Russia's military had created a safe corridor for their passage through Ukraine. Mr. Medinsky also said that the sides had reached a mutual understanding on several proposals at the negotiating table at the first round of talks on a potential ceasefire in Belarus on Monday. Mr. Zelenksyy has said Russia must stop bombing if it wants to negotiate. Coastal city of Mariupol encircled. Earlier, Britain's Defense Ministry said Mariupol, a large port city further east from Kherson on the Azov Sea, was encircled by Russian forces. Mariupol Mayor Vadim Boychenko said the attacks there had been relentless. "We cannot even take the wounded from the streets, from houses and apartments today, since the shelling does not stop," he was quoted by the Interfax news agency as saying. Loading. Russian pounding of Kharkiv continues. Russia has continued bombing Kharkiv, Ukraine's second-largest city, with about 1.5 million people. Another round of aerial attacks shattered buildings and lit up the skyline with balls of fire on Wednesday. At least 21 people were and 112 injured over the past day, said Zelenksyy, head of the Kharkiv Regional Administration. A member of the Organization for Security and Cooperation, OSCE, in Europe's Special Ukraine Monitoring Mission, was during the shelling on Kharkiv on Tuesday, the OSCE said in a statement on Wednesday. The OSCE named the victim as Marina Fanina and said she had died while getting supplies for her family in a city that has become a war zone. Loading. Several Russian planes were shot down over Kharkiv, according to Alexei Arestovich, a top advisor to Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenksyy. Kharkiv today is the Stalingrad of the 21st century, Mr. Arestovich said, invoking what is considered one of the most heroic episodes in Russian history, the 5-month defense of the city from the Nazis during World War II. From his basement bunker, Kharkiv Mayor Igor Terekov told the BBC, "The city is united and we shall stand fast." Russian attacks, many with missiles, blew the roof off Kharkiv's 5-story regional police building and set the top floor on fire, and also hit the intelligence headquarters and a university building. Officials said residential buildings were also hit, but gave no details. The aftermath of shelling at the National University in Kharkiv, Ukraine. State Emergency Service of Ukraine. Explosion rocks Kiev train station. Russia's 64-kilometer-long convoy of tanks and other vehicles remained outside of the capital, Kiev, which continues to be struck by shelling. An explosion near Kiev's central train station, where thousands of women and children were being evacuated on Wednesday evening. Interior Ministry advisor Anton Herashchenko said in an online post it was caused by falling wreckage from a Russian missile that was downed by Ukrainian air defense. The falling debris hit a heating pipe, causing the blast, but caused far less damage and casualties than if the missile had hit its target in central Kiev, he said, without saying if anyone had been hurt in the explosion. On the far edges of Kiev, volunteer fighters well into their 60s manned a checkpoint to try to block the Russian advance. "In my old age I had to take up arms," said Andriy Goncharuk, 68. He said the fighters needed more weapons, but wheel the enemy and take their weapons. French teacher Pyotr Vyurko says he is prepared to use his rifle to fight off the Russians. AP, Vadim Gerda. Russian warplanes bombed the village of Gorenka, a half-hour's drive from Ukraine's capital, on Wednesday, leaving the bodies of villagers strewn among ruined homes, residents said. In the aftermath, Larisa Lipatova crowded under blankets with 7 other villagers in a cold, damp concrete cellar among jars of pickled vegetables. A candle stuck in a pickle jar, propped up in front of a religious icon, provided their only light. Ms. Lipatova wept, covering her face with one hand, as she spoke in the dark with a message for Ukraine's invaders. "We don't need to be freed. Leave us alone." Gorenka resident Pyotr Vyurko, an 81-year-old French teacher, said he was prepared to use his rifle to shoot invaders because he had a daughter and grandson. "If they come here, I'll jab them with a pitchfork if I don't have weapons, but I do have weapons," he said. A residential building destroyed by recent shelling in the city of Irpin in the Kiev region. Serhiy Nusnenko. Conflicting casualty figures. The UN Human Rights Office said it had confirmed the deaths of 227 civilians